Big game, they're all big.
Got a little butterflies? If you don't, work them up. You ought to have just a little bit of butterflies, just a little bit of shake.
Kick ass, let everything hang out.
In the long and storied history of the NFL, there have been over 7,000 football games. Although there are degrees of importance in every contest, very few attain the status of greatness. A memorable football game is as rare as a masterpiece painting, but also very similar. For like a fine work of art, there is a good deal of subjectivity when it comes to defining its beauty, power, and significance. What is it that makes some games burn brightly even in the dimmest corridors of our memory? To many purists, they are the contests dominated by fiercely aggressive defense. Contact is indeed the most stimulating essence of the sport. But historically, what brings people out of their seats and onto their feet are those gripping affairs where great defense very grudgingly yields to an all-out effort on offense. The great games involve fans as much as players. They are the ones that stretch the emotions of the populace with cheers and tears. So much so that fans and players alike are often mentally and physically drained by game's end. Above all, the truly classic contests are those whose outcome are seemingly decided by some higher order. They are the suspenseful affairs that are only resolved in the final seconds, when desperate men sketch images of victory that, like masterpieces of art, remain forever frozen in time. There have been over 7,000 games played in the NFL. Only a select few stand out as the very best that have ever been played. Most discussions about great football games begin and end with Alan Amici's touchdown and the Baltimore Colts' sudden death victory in the 1958 championship. No game in NFL history is more revered than this overtime epic that began on an unusually mild late December day in New York City. The high-profile Giants featured the likes of Frank Gifford, Alex Webster, Sam Huff, and a coaching staff that included two talented young assistants. To many observers, they had a clear edge over Weeb Ewbank's very jittery Baltimore Colts.
In the locker room, everybody's nervous for the first time we've ever played in the championship game in the Yankee Stadium, and Weeb's going down. Each guy, he brought each guy in. He drafted, he knew us, and he's going down, saying where we came from. He picked us up off the sandlots. He had a great speech. But about 5 or 6 of us never heard it because we were in the head throwing up. We were nervous.
Ironically, once the game began, it was the more seasoned Giants who did some coughing up. Led by quarterback Johnny Unitas, Baltimore took advantage of numerous Giant fumbles to forge a 14-3 halftime lead. A blowout appeared imminent, especially when the Colts drove to the Giant goal line early in the third quarter.
At first we tried just, going over from about the 1 yard line. The ground was rather frozen down on that end of the field. And I didn't get good footing, and I tried 3 times and couldn't get in from the 1 yard line. So John, in his most inventive way, called me to throw a pass. It was going to be a pitch out, and then Jim Mutchler was to release from his block and then end up in the end zone. Not having heard that play before, I completely blew it, and I thought it was a sweep. So I got tackled for about a 5 yard loss, and then the whole momentum of that game changed.
In a contest that had equal mixtures of Greek comedy and tragedy. The Giants haphazardly stumbled back. Alex Webster's timely effort following Kyle Rote's fumble set up one Giant touchdown. And in the fourth quarter, the suddenly high-flying hometowners grabbed the lead on Frank Gifford's score. Giant fans dreamed of a championship. With just 2 minutes remaining, it was only a first down away. But a controversial call on Frank Gifford's attempt to gain it on 3rd and 4 began what would be a Giant nightmare.
I think they blew the call. There's a mental thing in your head when you have a 3rd down and a yard to go or half a yard or whatever it happened to be. You know when you've made it. I didn't even look over to the yardstick.
Frank, you should have. New York punted, pinning the Colts far back. The lead seemed safe. What happened next, however, altered the course of professional football. Johnny Unitas desperately drove Baltimore downfield. Stunned Giant fans watched in horror. But NFL executives looked on in glee. For the first time, a nationally televised championship mesmerized millions of viewers. Many more tuned in just in time to witness Steve Myra's game-tying field goal and the NFL's first venture into sudden death.
It was very strange. You know, we were all asking each other what happens next, or, you know, the rules weren't too clear on that. So, but that's again where a guy like Unitas always stepped in there. He was the brains of the outfit, no question about it.
Baltimore lost the coin toss. But after the Giants failed again in their opening drive, the third-year quarterback picked up where he left off in regulation. Although only a field goal was needed, the cocky Unitas left little doubt that with the title on the line, he was leaving nothing to chance.
Well, I was just thinking about a score. I would really, you know, the field goal really never entered my mind. I never have put too much strength on field goals myself. I'd rather go for a touchdown. I knew right then and there that we had the ball game won.
John was somewhat criticized for not calling a timeout there and going for the field goal. I think a lot of people have forgotten that it was 3rd down. They thought we were going for it on 4th. But in the event that we missed it, we still had, you know, time for the field goal. But an interesting thing on that play, which was the genius of a Unitas, and a lot of people missed this. We were on the right hash mark, and everybody in the world, including the Giants, thought we were going to go for an off tackle to the left, and if we missed, we'd be right smack in front of the goalpost. And John just took that little bit of a gamble and ran to the right on that play. And everybody was stacked to the left. And he had Lenny Moore there, who was not known as a great blocker. And he threw a key block, and it was wide open. I mean, there wasn't anything to the play.
Through the years, this dramatic championship has been elevated to legendary proportions. Yet legends die hard. Despite well-documented evidence to the contrary, the grandeur of this game is something of a myth.
People have built it up to be such a great game, and it was a good game, but it was far from a great game.
That game was probably the greatest game for the National Football League because of the notoriety of it. But I don't think that game was that good a game, really. I don't think it was the best game ever played.
You know, it wasn't a picture-perfect type game. I think it was just a dramatic ending that most people remember. And it was the greatest game I ever played in, I'll put it that way.
On January 2nd, 1982, a steamy, sultry Orange Bowl provided the backdrop for a first-round playoff game between the San Diego Chargers and Miami Dolphins.
Here we go, Dolphins! Here we go!
Even before kickoff, anxious fans spoke sportscasters' jargon to describe their excitement over what would eventually be one of the greatest games ever played.
Well, I tell you, this is going to be a good one, because I tell you get those big boys racking them down. There's some head cracking going on today, and I tell you, the San Diego Chargers, and somebody's going to fumble and I tell you, it's going to be a good barn burner down in the Orange Bowl. Danny Fouts and David Woodley and all those other big boys. Head cracking going on today, Henry.
The Dolphins were slight favorites to win, but the visiting Chargers shocked everyone with a barrage of first quarter scores. Wes Chandler's punt return ignited an outburst of 24 unanswered points as San Diego looked to turn the game into an early rout.
Way to go, James! Way to go, James! Way to buck in there!
But Coach Don Coryell knew that with 3 quarters still to play, too much time remained for his Chargers to relax.
I think what happened is that we woke the Dolphins up and created a sense of urgency within their football team that, hey, we got to get back into this game. We got to get back into it now.
The Dolphins made a key move when they yanked faltering quarterback David Woodley for backup Don Strock.
My first thoughts were, please don't put me in there. But we knew the Chargers had a average defense at that time. My basic feeling was that we had to throw the ball to win the game. The Chargers ran a lot of man-to-man coverage at that time. I could see that, and we tried to run as many man-to-man patterns as we could. And we got Tony Nathan free down the middle a few times, and Duriel Harris off of a double team, and we really basically called all the man-to-man patterns we had in our offense.
I think when you enter a game in that type of situation for a backup quarterback, the pressure's off. Hey, I wasn't there when it was 24-0. I didn't throw the interceptions or make the bad plays. As the backup quarterback, he's coming in really with a clean slate. Pressure was off him, and all of a sudden it was on us. We had not prepared for Strock. We talked about Strock, but we prepared all week for Woodley and scrambling and rolling out and doing the things that he does. Strock, conversely, he just pulls back, takes a look around, he's so experienced, and dumps off to the open receiver.
Strock just came in and he played a perfect game. He couldn't play it any better. He'll never play any better than he did that evening.
While the Chargers were held in check for the rest of the half, the Dolphins were plotting to unleash a schoolyard play that caught the San Diego defense totally unprepared.
We call the play 86 circle curl lateral, is the name of the play. Coach Shula said, well, how about the circle curl lateral? And everybody was kind of like, well, how about the circle curl lateral? There was a timeout, there was 6 seconds on the clock. Pretty hard to believe that a guy would bite on a play like that with 6 seconds to go and you're 50 yards away from the goal line. Then it worked perfectly, and it made every high school coach in the world happy because every high school has that play.
Strock drops the throw. He's firing for Harris. Lateral, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Dolphins. To Tony Nathan on the last play of the first half. I told y'all we're going to come back. We're going to come back and whoop them. Miami's #1. Never give up on Miami.
When we saw the play develop, we laughed. We said, oh boy, we're in for it now. And what it did for us is it made us realize that, hey, this game isn't over. This game is going to go right down to the wire, and so be it. We're going to be there too.
The Chargers roared back on the play of number 80 tight end Kellen Winslow. In a game with many heroes, Winslow earned special notice, setting playoff records for receptions and yardage while overcoming a pinched nerve, a bruised shoulder, and heat exhaustion.
I remember Dave Levy, who's now our offensive line coach. I came out of the game going to the bench, wincing in pain. About a minute later, I ran by Dave, tapped him on the hip, and said, I'm going back in. And as I was running by him, I heard him saying to the coaches upstairs in the press box through the speaker, I don't believe this. He's going back into the game. And I looked back at him and started grinning. And I said, this sounds like TV. It sounds like somebody wrote this.
The drama continued to unfold as both teams seized, then lost the lead. But with only minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins finally took control and appeared to have victory within their grasp.
Dolphins running off the clock. The Chargers have to force a turnover. Strock hands off to the first man. The ball's on the ground. Chargers have recovered. So San Diego has one more shot from their own 18.
Trailing 38-31, the Chargers mounted a desperation drive. With less than a minute to go, San Diego tied the game on a play that probably should have failed.
I was zeroed in on Kellen Winslow. I escaped out to the right and saw Kellen heading back to the corner of the end zone. Didn't even see James Brooks. Well, to my surprise, Kellen couldn't get it. The next thing I know, here's this flash, and it's James Brooks, and he makes the catch for the tying touchdown. That's one that's just pure luck.
The Chargers' good luck continued during the final play of regulation. The Dolphins' Uwe von Schamann attempted the winning field goal, but Kellen Winslow added to his heroics by blocking the kick. In overtime, the Chargers had their opportunity to win, but the results were similar.
Badurska's ready. It's a 27-yarder. The snap, it's down, he hits it, it's up. It's no good.
Badurska had never missed a game-winning field goal in his career. But then the Chargers blocked a second Dolphin field goal try minutes later, and Miami's fighting spirit had finally reached the breaking point.
In the overtime, when we had the opportunity to win the game and missing the field goal, and I think that moment was probably the big down of that particular day. Even though they beat us later on during the course of the game, I think that moment was probably the most toughest moment to swallow as a player in that game.
The Chargers were given a second chance, and this time they did not fail.
At the end of the game, I felt our offensive line had dominated the Dolphins' defensive line and had demoralized them to the point where, hey, we can't get to the quarterback and we're not going to win.
Behind perfect protection, Fouts picked Miami apart, setting the stage for Badurska's game-winning field goal. On a hot, muggy Florida evening, two teams had waged an epic battle that they would remember for the rest of their lives.
Nietzsche, the German philosopher, once said, "If it doesn't kill me, it's going to make me stronger." And that's what that game did. We almost died, and we came through.
I've seen an awful lot of great games, but I think that one has to be at the top. It was uplifting. There was no sense of defeat by anybody involved, or even by the people in the stands. To see it was just man rising as high as he could in a form of athletic endeavor. I felt that I just experienced something rare and unusual that I would not soon be seeing again, if ever.
In the late 50s, the Baltimore Colts had turned the NFL championship into a one-horse race, winning exciting title games in 1958 to 1959. But in 1960, in their attempt to win an unprecedented third league championship, the Colts played in a regular season game as memorable as any playoff contest. Against the Detroit Lions in Baltimore, quarterback John Unitas and halfback Lenny Moore, number 24, helped give the Colts an 8-3 lead. Baltimore's prestigious passing attack had already helped earn the Colts 6 wins against only 3 losses, while the inept Lions appeared to be on their way to another losing season. Number 40, Bobby Boyd's interception protected the Colts' expected advantage, but as the game wore on, the predictable ultimately made way for the peculiar. The infallible Unitas to Raymond Berry connection failed to hook up. And moments later, the Lion offense uncharacteristically took Baltimore's defense, and everything else for that matter, head on. Detroit eventually went ahead 13-8 late in the game. However, Unitas, renowned for last-minute miracles, once again began to work his magic. Number 19 cleverly tamed the Lion defense without the aid of a whip and chair.
We thought we had him, and it was a situation that was third down and long yardage, and we thought he was going to throw short, and damned if he didn't go back, and he threw a long one. And it looked as though the ball was going to go way over Lenny's head, and Night Train was right with him. And Lenny leaps horizontally in the air, and he catches the ball in the end zone. And as soon as he catches the ball, I swear to God, Night Train turned white. He's black. I mean, he got like real crazy. The only thing we saw then was this huge crowd came out of the end zone and covered the field on that side. Meanwhile, we come off the field, and I have two people on the sidelines. I don't know how they got there, and I'm fighting with one of them. One guy pulls a knife on me. I'm running around George Wilson, our coach, hoping that should he stab someone, it might be George instead of me. George will say, "What are you doing? You crazy?"
The temporary insanity afflicting both the crowd and the players of this game became even more evident on the ensuing kickoff, with only half a minute remaining.
We kick off to the Lions, and I see Gil Mames hit Alex Hawkins, who was my teammate. He wasn't maybe one of my favorite football players, but he was still my teammate. He took a sucker shot on him and knocked the hell out of Hawkins. And Mames is laying on the ground, so when I run by Mames, I drop kicked him right in the face as hard as I could. But I got caught and I got thrown out of the game. Lo and behold, the next play, Earl Marlowe throws a pass to Jim Gibbons, the slowest guy on the field other than me, and he runs for a touchdown.
The thing I remember is the absolute silence in the stadium. You could hear Jim Gibbons running. It was so quiet. And that was it, boy. There was not one cheer. I mean, it was absolute stone silence. And that pretty well knocked us out of the race in 1960.
Weeb Eubanks blamed me for losing the damn game. Just because I got kicked out of the game. It stopped the clock. There was only 14 seconds left to go in the game, and we lost the ball game. And I guarantee you, I didn't know what to say. I got fined $1,000 for doing it, but I said, well, I got satisfaction out of it. I didn't like Mames to start off with. I thought he was a jerk, but then after you meet the guy down at the National Football League alumni thing, great fella. Going out, getting me beer, buying me pizza, wonderful fella.
I had to put on a different jersey because I thought they were going to kill me. But everybody was in a state of shock. I don't know if they ever got over that shock, but it really was a great shock to the fans.
While there have been more famous games for sheer excitement and entertainment, the Lions' zany 20-15 win deserves a place among the NFL's greatest games. In the early 70s, the Miami Dolphins were a portrait of perfection. Following two consecutive Super Bowl titles in 1972 and 73, the Dolphins were intent on capturing a third. However, in 1974, Miami wasn't the only team flying its colors proudly. The Oakland Raiders were to pro football what Blackbeard the Pirate and his motley crew were to the open seas. And the silver and black's ominous image was frighteningly evident when they hosted the Dolphins in the opening round of the playoffs.
When we came out for that game, there was more excitement in the stadium than I ever heard anywhere or felt anywhere. And everyone had a black handkerchief, and from the pregame warm-ups, they were wired in Oakland. We were playing the Dolphins, and it was going to be big. I'm excited, the team's excited, we're going to get them and all this stuff. And we kick off, the opening kickoff crescendo, like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Whap, we kick the ball. They get the ball, and boom, all the way back. He runs, I think it was Nat Moore, ran it back 100 yards. And now here we were, Black Sunday, Raiders, revenge, Dolphins, get them in Oakland, fans crazy, team crazy, good, gonna do it. And the opening kickoff in our park, and they run it back all the way. So now it's 7-0, and the fans haven't even sat down yet.
The Raiders' fortunes went from bad to worse when their explosive passing attack failed to ignite. But while the offense let opportunities slip away, the Raiders' defense took a firm hold on the Dolphins' elusive running game. Oakland took pressure off its struggling offense by placing it on Miami's. And when the first quarter ended, the opening kickoff return remained the only score. The Raiders stuck with their passing game despite its early failure, and the all-out assault of the end zone eventually paid off. Charlie Smith's touchdown put Oakland on the board, and as the game wore on, the Raiders continued to focus their attention on the Dolphins' secondary. Fred Biletnikoff's circus catch was ruled out of bounds, but Oakland's ringmaster called for a repeat performance.
Ball on the 13, second and 10. Stabler back, looks left, throws right. Biletnikoff, a leaping catch. Touchdown! Trailing for the first time, 14-10, Miami's Don Shula refueled his team's competitive fires. The fleet-footed Paul Warfield's touchdown helped put the Dolphins back on top, 19-14. However, in the fourth quarter, the Raiders answered the score with their own speed burner, wide receiver Cliff Branch, number 21.
Before you let you go take it. Right. I think you can get to around the outside. I put on the outside hand.
I can run under, you know. I can take it that
Good job, good job.
They're going to the air now. Here's the deep one, the Browns. Deep. He's got it!
Branch's 72-yard touchdown gave Oakland the lead once more. But with time becoming a factor, Miami called upon its punishing running attack to eat up both yardage and the clock on its way to the Raider end zone. Fullback Larry Zonka muscled his way to the Oakland 23, setting up halfback Benny Malone's Herculean effort that gave Miami a 26-21 lead. Just 2 minutes remained after Malone's touchdown. And while the time left seemed insufficient to the grieving Raiders, it seemed like an eternity to the concerned Dolphins.
I remember thinking that I wished on the scoring play that we had that put us ahead, I was concerned because there was so much time left. I knew that Stabler had the capacity to take that ball back down the field, and he did.
When you get in a pressure situation like that where everything's riding on a single play or two, there's no one that you'd rather have involved in that play than Kenny Stabler. He has the uncanny knack of putting a ball between people and between hands and just being able to slip things in there from all different angles, and that's exactly what he did.
With time running out, Stabler dashed Miami's hopes of a third consecutive title in dramatic fashion.
Here he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's caught, he throws. It is! He caught it! McCarthy was hit as he threw. It looked like he might have been lobbing it into the promised land for Miami. But no, Davis got there first, and it was the Raiders' promised land.
Oakland's 28-26 win evoked emotional extremes, characteristic of only the greatest of games.
After the game, there was Don just crying, just letting it all out, crying, and afterwards saying he was just so disappointed that for the guy's sake. But this is the one time in my life that I've seen him actually just sit down and let the tears flow for a disappointment.
You'll never see a better game than this one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you'll agree.
Frankly, it was maybe the greatest football game I have ever seen. It was just incredible.
On a day savage enough to make a St. Bernard whimper, they played the 1967 NFL Championship.
The operator said, very cheery, "Good morning, Mr. Rensel. It's 8 a.m. It's 15 below zero, and there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the northwest. Have a pleasant day."
It is called Russian winter, the kind of brutal cold that made Napoleon and Hitler flee in panic from the doorstep of Moscow. But in Green Bay, it is called Packer weather. Here men conquer and laugh at the elements. Today, Vince Lombardi's Packers walk toward an unprecedented third straight NFL championship. Prisoners of the weather, the Dallas Cowboys wore the look of convicts walking the final mile.
Prior to the game, of course, we got there 2 days before the game, and there's a picture that I took of Meredith. He had his hands cupped like this, and he was saying, easy money, you know, like the game was going to be easy. And if he'd only known, you know, how cold it was going to be, I don't think he would have said that.
You had no feeling in your hands. There's nobody that has an advantage in that kind of weather. That is cold. I mean, it was miserable.
It was so cold that when you literally walked outside, you couldn't take it. Now, you play in cold games most of the time, and it takes a while for you to get cold. But in this particular circumstance, the cold hit you like the moment you were out there. The band was out there, you know, to play before the game, and we looked over there and I saw like 15 guys in the tuba and trumpet section, and all their faces had blood all over. And what had happened, they were going out there to play, and the instruments stuck to their lips, and when they pulled the instrument away, it just ripped all the skin on their lips off. So everywhere you looked, you saw this kind of insanity going on. We go back to the locker room, and instead of going over our game plan and stuff, we're like trying to improvise and ad-lib on how we're going to get through the game. Forget winning the game, how are we going to survive the game? Well, somebody got this wild idea that let's put the stocking net down over our faces, and then we can cut out eye holes and nose holes and a mouth hole, you know, and like things that just seemed preposterous that there would have been that much concern with. That's all we could think about. So Landry, I think, just kind of lost control of what the situation was at that moment, and I don't blame him. I mean, nobody wanted to hear about game plans.
The cold never came into my, never thought about the cold, like, because I wanted to win that game so bad.
I didn't feel the cold as much that day as I would have on a normal day. I was excited about the game. We had a great deal of emotion, a great deal of adrenaline running through our bodies, and we had a job to do. We had other things on our mind. And that particular day, we were worried about Dallas. We weren't worried about the cold.
With the Packers focused on victory and the Cowboys merely on survival, the first period took a natural course, a course that took Green Bay into the end zone. Twice Bart Starr hit number 86 Boyd Dollar with touchdown passes, and the Packers built a 14-0 lead in the second quarter.
We had one of the, if not the fastest teams to ever play the game. We had speed at every skill position and at places where you weren't supposed to have speed. Not only was our speed taken away, I think the fact that Bobby Hayes was nullified by the weather conditions. That was not one of Bobby's great games.
I guess one of my most vivid memories of that game is of Bob Hayes, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, running his pass patterns with his hands in his pants. He put both hands down in the front of his pants and he would run a pass pattern with his hands still in his pants.
Cowboy speed was not the only thing muffled by the cold.
I blew my whistle to start the ball game, and I didn't really blow it. It was only a half a blow because it was a tweet, and that was the end of all whistles for the ball game. They all froze on us. Joe Connell, he tried to blow his whistle and nothing came out, and he took it out, and he didn't have a nipple on his whistle or rubber, and half his lip came with it. So we just yelled, stay away, keep off them, and everything.
As icicles lengthened into stalactites, Cowboy chances for a comeback grew longer. Finally, the Doomsday defense drew a bead on Bart Starr and battered him. A touchdown by defensive end George Andre, number 66, and a field goal narrowed the score to 14-10 at the half.
The total momentum of the game had shifted over. Now, by this time, it's much colder than it was even at the start of the game. But we've gotten our focus and our concentration on the game itself.
The game huffed and puffed along and lost its steam in the third quarter. The cold became intolerable. Then Vince Lombardi's electric blanket, installed under the turf to thaw the ground, failed. Lambeau Field was an ice rink with a surface more suited to Hans Brinker and his silver skates than football players and cleats.
The field was like take a rug and put it over marble, or maybe just play on marble, and you've got an idea of the field and what it was like in terms of traction. And I didn't really want to hit the ground. I didn't want to get hit by anybody, and I didn't want to hit the ground. Meredith was sitting in the huddle, and he gets down on one knee and he goes, "Red right, hang on." I said, "That's easy for you to say, Don, but what did you say?" He said, "Right, hang on two." And what was happening was his cheeks were freezing, and he couldn't talk, and his ability to formulate the words was leaving him. So Don had to call the plays by taking his hands and moving his mouth in such a way. I mean, he was talking with his hands.
8 seconds into the fourth quarter, the frozen lips of Don Meredith formed a bold but risky call. A halfback option pass from Dan Reeves to Lance Renzel. The pass not only sliced through high winds and frigid air, but seemed destined to carve out the Cowboys' first NFL championship. The Cowboys achieved their first lead, 17-14. Trapped inside their igloo, the Packers appeared a beaten team.
When we came on the field as a team to start that drive, and this is most important, everybody in that huddle had the look that we were going to get it done somehow, some way, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. I felt that way, and as I looked into the eyes of the other players in that huddle, it was a great thing to see.
With 4 minutes 40 seconds remaining, the Green Bay Packers launched one of the most thrilling and dramatic comebacks in NFL history. They would have to travel 68 yards across a polar ice cap and through a defense determined to preserve their first NFL title.
I remember Boyd Dowler's head bouncing off the frozen turf when he caught a pass for a first down, and his head bounced 3 or 4 times.
The Packers' march centered on 2 unlikely heroes. Running backs Donnie Anderson, number 44, and Chuck Mercine, number 30.
They were alert enough at that stage of the game, cold and battered, to come back and tell me of ways that they could get open when they really were not the primary receiver.
The Packers plowed inside the 10 when they suckered Bob Lilly out of position by falsely pulling a guard, then sneaking Mercine into the vacated rush lane. At the goal line, the Packers' drive stalled. 16 seconds remained, and it was 3rd and goal when they took their final timeout.
2 other times earlier in the game, we had run a play which we call a wedge play, designed strictly for short yardage out in the field. It was also a goal line play. The problem was that at that end, the south end of the field, a shadow is cast down there late in the season by the scoreboard, and the field was really frozen. And so the backs could not stand up and even get to the line of scrimmage. So when I went to the sideline, I told Coach Lombardi the wedge play would work. I said, but the backs can't get there. I said, I'm upright. I can just feel my way in for a couple of steps and then just lunge in there. He said, great, run it. Let's get this thing over with.
It was too slick in that part of the field to do any kind of end runs or any kind of, anything other than maybe a straight ahead play or a quarterback sneak. I had told Jethro, I said, Jethro, I think they're going to come right at you or me, right up the middle. And I was trying to dig some holes with my cleats, but the ice was a couple inches thick. And I said, we ought to call timeout and get a screwdriver and dig us some footholes.
Here are the Packers. 3rd down, inches to go. To Bader. 17-14. Cowboys out in front. Packers trying for the go-ahead score. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneak, and he's able to touch down. The Packers are out in front. 20-17. They have 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions, NFL
He's
champions.
probably the greatest played in all of 15 years when he fell over for that touchdown, and when we won that ball game, we knew we were going to win our 3rd championship in a row.
And I give them all the credit for being champions and doing what needed to be done to win. But I got to tell you, I've never seen a loss take the heart out of a team like that loss took it out of the Dallas Cowboys. On the plane ride home, not one word was said. Not one word. It was like a tune for 3 hours on a flight. Press came out and called us chokers and said that the Dallas Cowboys couldn't win the big one.
Vince Lombardi's Packers had won another big one. They had conquered both the elements and the Cowboys to capture a record 3rd straight NFL title. It was a game that would literally become frozen in the memory. A game considered the greatest in pro football history.